Alrighty then, there we go. Forge gang! I am still a hard man. Let's go. Alrighty then, so I will not be going back to church ever. Any church. As far as I am concerned, I'm sick of all of them. I've tried everything that I could do, but I don't have no faith and I don't really care anymore. And I've just lost interest, and so I'm never going back to any church. Regardless of what denomination or what type of, I don't know, sanctimonial stuff that they do, I just don't give a shit. They're all loud, and it's very hard to get on. I don't really care too much about the loudness and the yelling and the shouting and laughing. It just doesn't please me. It's a eyesore. Well, I should say it's an ear sore to me. It's a very unpleasant experience. I don't really care about the singing and the hymns. It's all just a bunch of gobbledygook to me. The preaching is always the same shit. It's always the same freaking garbage, and it never changes. They might quote a scripture or something and turn it into an entire sermon, and half the time they don't even seem to have any idea what they're talking about. And I just feel dumber for going. It feels like every time I go to church, I feel dumber than if I had not gone. And so it's a very unpleasant and just boring thing to mess with. So I'm not going back to church. I thought there was something there. And for the longest time, I kept telling myself that. For the longest period of time, I kept saying that, well, if I just stick it out, it'll pay off on its own. If I just stick it out, it'll pay off by itself. It'll merit itself or whatever, but no, it never does. And I don't really go to church anyways. I haven't been to church for almost a year. And when I went, I didn't feel any connection. In fact, I actually felt humiliated and dumbed down. The churches are not... The thing that a lot of people get wrong with the churches is they're already very liberal. Like, the churches are already boomer run and liberal as hell. As all hell. And they're run by a bunch of hippies. Like, the modern church is nothing to be proud of. It's all run by a bunch of liberals and a bunch of, I don't know, people that they're either hippies or yuppies. They want to just take drugs and rock and roll. Or do rap or whatever. And they think that that they're going to have like some brotherhood thing or something, like a common brotherhood of man, which I don't really care much about. I don't really care about their values either, their social community values. Community has abandoned me. Look, Texas gave up on me, okay? The Texans and the Americans gave up on me a long time ago. I don't have no community, and I have no friends or nobody to rely on. I am just me. So I don't give a fuck about some kind of community. There's no community to be had. There's nothing to be shared. It's just a bunch of useless talking. And most of the people don't even talk about God anyways. They don't even really talk about it. They just talk about their stupid, goddamn, boring lives. It's the most useless, goddamn waste of my time ever. So anyways, and then the other side of it is this little patriotism bullshit. This goddamn America First patriotism shit that I don't care about. It's like America destroyed Europe, bombed German cities into absolute heaping rubbish, and completely wiped out an entire culture. And obviously that wasn't the only part of Europe that was destroyed, but it's pretty obvious that Germany was the prime target of the bombing, of the carpet bombing in World War II. So trying to glorify that, to me, is a waste of time. It's a waste of goddamn fucking effort. So I don't have no use for the church, and really, probably, to be more honest, the church is no use for me. Like, the churches have no use for me, and I have no use for them. It's a waste of time to go to church. It's a fucking goddamn waste of time, really, for anyone to even go to church, because all it is bullshit. So, I'm staying out of the church. I'm never going to go back. I did not like the people that I met there. I really did not like the people, and I did not really enjoy the company. I was rubbed the wrong way by the churches, and I will never be going back. Whenever they pray, I shut my eyes and I just pretend. I go along. I don't believe it. I just don't believe in the church. You could say that Christ is one thing and the church is another thing. Well, the church is a waste of goddamn time. It's a waste of goddamn space. And the way that the modern liberal church is right now, anyways, and I'm not saying that it can't change, it should just be torn down. Like, get a bulldozer and tear down the churches. Destroy all of the Christian churches. Like, get a bulldozer. Get whatever is necessary and tear down all of the goddamn useless churches in the United States and in the West. Okay, we don't need them. We don't need the church. If you want to believe in something akin to a god or whatever, I guess that's fine. But, and maybe something will change, Maybe when the last of these baby boomers die off, most useless generation of all time, maybe when all of the hippies and the boomers die off, the churches will go back to some kind of tradition or something tangible, something that's actually tangible, which is actually going to fellowship and worship God. But every church I've been to is not that. All it is just a bunch of people talking about their boring, mundane lives. So, how should I say this? It's full of blue-pilled normies. All of the churches I've been to are just blue-pilled normies. They don't want to talk about tangible things. Like, the church does not want to face the facts that if they talk about certain truths, they're going to be persecuted. They're going to be persecuted by society at large, and they're going to be persecuted by the government if they delve into these certain truths. And the people at those churches don't want to do that. They would rather be a bunch of hillbilly, trailer park trash, yuppie, hippie idiots that think that there is still something of a community or something called a community. There are no communities, okay? Most of the population is in some way on drugs or addicted to drugs or is in some way involved in crime or have been through the system or have been in trouble with the law because of opioids. As much opioid addiction as there is, as much issues and problems as there is, the church does absolutely nothing. American soldiers come home in body bags year after year after year after year. More and more Americans come back in body bags or who have their limbs blown off. And I see it on television all the goddamn time. Okay, those are the goddamn people that they want to pray for. I'm not praying for American soldiers. Fuck them. I hope they suffer, and I hope they die miserable and horrible, wretched deaths. I hope every single one of them dies of cancer. What do you think about that? There's my patriotism. I don't have no patriotism. There is no American patriotism. Okay, the South was looted, vandalized, burned down, raped, and pillaged by General William Tecumseh Sherman, and the U.S. Air Force bombed German cities into absolute rubble. You know, they also destroyed Italian and French towns and cities too. And the British didn't benefit from that war either. Like, it's not as if the English really benefited siding with the Americans. Okay, so there's my patriotism. My patriotism is that America wiped out and killed Native Americans, bombed German cities for no real reason, went into a war for no reason, and had a bunch of nuclear weapons armed at half the continent of Europe for 47 years, and is doing it again for what? You know, endless wars for the state of Israel, which is, you know, why does there need to even be a state of Israel? Does the state of Israel really need to exist? Or is it really just a sore that is simply causing an entire region to be never-endingly or never-ceasingly unstable? You know, there are like 3 or 4 different Islamic sects, and they all fight each other, and they do savage things to each other. But they all agree that the state of Israel is a segregational apartheid state. And how interesting it is that you cannot have Western states that do the things that Israel does. Like, South Africa and the United States can never in a million years push the same policies of ethnic displacement that the state of Israel does. So, but hey, I am glad that the post-Second World War consensus is falling apart. But I'm never going to go back to church. I hate the church. I do not like the church. The church is a modern liberal institution, and it already has all the decadence and nihilism, okay? The Nicene Creed is bullshit. The Apostles' Creed is nonsense. And Southern Israelite was right. Southern Israelite was completely right about the failure and the dormancy and the absolute inability of the feudal church or the traditional church to actually deal with the modern world. Its complete inability to even fight and resist the revival of pagan antiquity in the Renaissance, the revival of rational scientific principles in the Enlightenment, the application of them in the modern world. The church did absolutely nothing. Most useless, worn out, completely useless institution. There is parts of Europe that weren't even Christian 1,000 years ago. 1,000 years ago, that's half of the lifespan of Christianity. 1,000 years ago, and sometimes even less, there were parts of Europe that were not Christian. They were still pagan. They were still pagan and polytheistic. The church is a useless and corrupt and vile institution. It has no purpose or reason to exist. Code of Truth says, Forge Gang! I got your call last night at 11 p.m., Code of Truth. Anyways, the church is a piece of shit. I can't stand it. I'm never going to go back to church. I don't give a shit about it. I got your call last night at 11 p.m., Code of Truth, by the way. I tried to call you back, but I couldn't get a hold of you. Anyways, yeah. I don't believe in the church. And a lot of it was just taken from paganism anyways. A lot of Christianity borrowed from paganism. There's a lot of pagan influences in Christianity. There's a lot of Jewish influences in Christianity. And the Great Apostasy happened, and the church never recovered. So the bottom line is that whether or not the church was founded by Christ or the apostles, it failed. The church failed, Christianity failed, the Christians failed. The church and Christianity was a failure. The feudal church, which I don't think has any kind of apostolic succession to the apostles, I think that's all a bunch of made-up forgeries. Just like how the donation of Constantine was a forgery, that church failed. The church failed. One day they said that usury was bad, that usury was mortal sin, or buying usury was giving into mortal sin. The next day they said it's okay. It's actually fine to have a Vatican bank and to have money and to buy stuff. Even though that usury is supposed to be evil, all of your theologians are telling you that it's wrong, but you still do it. You know, one day sodomy is bad, now sodomy is great. Now, you know, let's bring the gays and the hippies and the pacifists and communists into the church. I don't think that people really understand just how much Jacobinism, Jeffersonianism, and communism is in the church. Like, the church is not a monarchical institution. Even though you have all these patristic writers saying that the ecclesiastical structure is monarchical, but it's all Republican, and it's all communist and socialist. Like, the heart of Christendom is communism. Like, the very soul of Christianity is Bolshevism. It is at its very soul. Well, actually, it's liberalism. It's not really communism, but just garden variety neoliberalism. I have seen atheist, agnostic, and secular people who have more conservative values than religious people. I have seen Christian and religious people who have more progressive values than I have seen in atheists and agnostics. I can't really name any names off the top of my head, but I can really say, I can vouch for this. Stephen Dawkins and Jordan Peterson are more conservative than Rick Perry and Pope Francis are. Jordan Peterson and Stephen Dawkins are more conservative than Rick Perry or Francis I ever was. They are literally more conservative than these religious people or people that have these so-called religious values. There are no religious values in the West. Okay? There are no religious values and there's no distinctions. Traditions of the apostles be damned. May they all burn in hell for all of eternity. There are no oral teachings of the apostles. That's some kind of stuff that was made up in the Middle Ages. That shit was made up and conjured up in the Middle Ages or at the end of antiquity, and it was just borrowed from pagans. It was borrowed from Greco-Roman and Germanic paganism and tradition. Probably even from Celtic traditions too. But even the polytheistic pagan doctrines made more sense. They made more sense than the teachings and dogmas of the medieval church. The dogmas are irrelevant and they make utterly no sense. And the Protestants are no better either. The Protestants didn't even really de-Catholicize. They retained a lot of traditions from Catholicism as well. And the Protestants believe in all the same ludicrous nonsense and false doctrines and false teachings and all this other nonsense. The Jews were not even monotheistic until 600 BC. And there's plenty of evidence, it's in Isaiah, that the Jews worshipped different gods. Israel and Judah were hypotheistic cultures. It was not until the Persian period, when they adopted things from Zoroastrianism, that they actually became monotheistic. Yahweh was a thunder god. Yahweh was a Canaanite thunder god. And the scriptures, the so-called Gospels, the 4 Gospels that we have were not written by Mark, Luke, Matthew, or John. They were written by other people. And the Gospels that we have are not from the 1st century. They're from the 3rd century. Somebody else wrote those Gospels in the late 1st and the early 2nd century. Dan McClellan has pointed this out many times, that the composition of the Synoptic Gospels was not complete until the 2nd century AD, until about 130 AD. There is no evidence prior to 130, 120 AD of those 4 Gospels existing in the way that they do. And Matthew, Mark, and Luke were probably copied from the Q Gospel. There is an earlier and now lost Gospel that we don't know about. It could have been the Gospel of Thomas, but we don't know for sure, or the Gospel of Judas. And those Synoptic Gospels were copied from that. They were copied from a Q manuscript. So, there isn't even concrete evidence that the Gospels were compiled in the 1st century AD. So, the church is meaningless. They're not going to fight for you. If you, have pride in who you are or where you come from, or you're proud of your heritage, it doesn't matter if you're African, European, Asian, Middle Eastern, Arab, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Nigerian, English, Italian, French, Korean, Native American, it doesn't matter. The church is going to tell you that you should hate yourself. You should hate who you are, and you should hate your ancestors, and you should hate your people. You should hate your ethnicity and your nationality. That's what you're going to learn when you go to the Christian church. When you go to the Christian church, they're going to teach you to hate your people. They're going to teach you to hate Western civilization and Western culture. They're going to tell you to hate your Greek forebears, your Roman forebears, your Viking forebears. They're going to tell you that the Vikings were bad people, that the Vikings were a bunch of brutish barbarians or something, and they were not. They obviously were not. And the church is going to teach you to hate who you are. They're going to teach you that it's sinful to masturbate, that it's sinful to go out with a prostitute, that it's sinful to really even have sex. And they're going to teach you that You shouldn't even, that you should sexually repress yourself. Actually, the church doesn't even teach that. There are so many child abuses in the Catholic and Orthodox Church and the different Protestant churches. There's also a lot of sexual abuse scandals in the Jehovah's Witnesses kingdom halls. If the church was so great, if the church was so fine and so dandy, why are there so many pedophiles and creeps in the church? Okay, all I see go to church is very stupid, low IQ people and potential pedos. I'm not marking anybody out, but I'm just saying. I don't get it. And what is the deal with these trad calves? What is the deal with these trad calves on the internet talking about they who shall not be named and the Freemasons, but every priest I see is a Freemason, goes to the lodge. Every Catholic priest I know of is a Freemason, goes to the lodge. And you can't talk about these subjects in the Catholic Church. What is with that? The church is a waste of time, and it's pointless to go to church. Science and biology proves that the church is wrong about evolution. And I'm not really a big fan of what the atheists vouch for either. I don't like the atheists either. The skeptics or the new atheist movement and these hipster atheists, I don't like their values of environmentalism, women and gay liberation. I don't care anything about what they say either, but if science can demonstrate to me that masturbation is not a sin, if science can demonstrate to me that that I don't have to be ashamed of my heritage, I'm going to go with the science. So what's up, Verdanian808? Vardanian808 says, let's go! Forge Gang! Verdanian808 says, the Warhammer of the Texas Rangers. Warhammer of the Texas Rangers. Verdanian808 says, where is Ricardo Perrier? Ricardo Perrier. Yeah. I have no joy when I go to church. I do not believe in the Christian religion. I do believe in God, and I do believe a little bit in what Jesus Christ taught. I do believe in that, and I do believe a bit in what Paul taught, but I do not consider myself a Christian. I don't believe in the Christian church, and I don't believe in any of the Christian dogmas. I do not consider myself to be a Christian, and I do not feel or have any part to be in the Christian church. I definitely don't believe in the Trinity. I don't think the Trinity is real, and I do not believe in all the nonsense that the church teaches. So I will never go back to church for the rest of my life. I will never go back to church for the rest of my life. I will never even consider going back to church. It is a waste of time. And I've even considered studying Oriental religions. Charles Taze Russell, the guy that created the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, he actually went and studied like Buddhism and Hinduism and Shintoism and like some of these Eastern Asian religions for a while before he came back and started to teach the Bible or whatever. Charles Taze Russell actually went about and studied that. And Joseph Smith was studying the mysteries of Abel. What was the guy that built the Temple of Solomon? Tubal-Cain, that's it. Joseph Smith studied the mysteries of Tubal-Cain and the mysteries around Solomon. And he was into like some stuff about like the Americas, the ancient Americas, and what could have happened in the Americas before Columbus arrived in the New World, stuff like that. And that's what I'm just going to do. I'm going to study mysticism and just look at different stuff. The traditional church was a failure for me. Christianity was just a big failure and a big roadblock to me. And to me, it feels as if Christianity is a failure. And it's just a big roadblock that I need to bet that I'm just better off just avoiding. It's just something to walk around and just leave be. Let other people suffer for that whose faith which I have nothing in. I have no place in the church, and I have no friends in self-professed Christians. Even people that say that they are just relatively part-time Christians, they are not my friends. Like these Christians, they're not my friends or my allies. None of these Christians are my allies or my friends. And to be honest, neither are the pagans or the atheists or any of them. None of these people are my friends and none of them are my allies. So anyways, that's it. Just a 30-minute rant and I'm done.